CentralValleyTalk.com.
And we are back on CentralValleyTalk.com. Don't my eyes look better? That was fun. That was fun. All right, we move on now. We're going to talk with Catherine Fitzgerald from Fresno First Bank, our local bank.
That's right.
How are you, Catherine?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good to see you. I say local bank. It's because, obviously, Fresno First Bank.
That's right.
It's what's the difference between having a monster out-of-town bank and a local bank?
Oh, I think I describe it best as it's like Cheers. You know, it's a bank where when you walk in, everybody knows your name.
Seriously, if I was a customer, I walked in,
I have.
is that required of the tellers to know everybody's name?
You know what? They are just great at that, and I think it's because everybody genuinely cares. I sit in what I call the catbird seat in the lobby, so I'm kind of out of the way. When you walk in, you don't see me. You walk towards the tellers, and I hear all the conversations. And I can attest, they ask how people's vacations were. They ask about their grandchildren. They know our customers, and they do a fabulous job of servicing their needs wherever that they may be. You know, we've had people call us from vacation. They lost their debit card. You know, things, all kinds of things you can imagine. We've gotten calls on the weekends, and you know, we take care of our customers.
Well, that's nice to know. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of the last time I was actually in my bank. I mean, we either use the drive-through or I do all my banking online.
Absolutely.
But you still have folks that actually come into the office.
Absolutely, we do. But we do have facilities to, you know, help our merchants, and we're primarily a business bank, help them to make deposits remotely, to deal with online banking. We have a mobile app. You know, we do all the things that you...
The big guys do.
Yeah. I think I would say we don't do everything the big guys do because you don't become just a number with us. We really care.
You don't want to do all the things the big guys do.
That's right. We pick and choose.
We pick and choose.
We do the good stuff.
I would think if I was a local business person and wanted a loan, I'd want to go to a local bank that might be more familiar with what's going on in the valley and more in touch with the local, you know, economic situation.
Absolutely.
So is that correct?
That's correct. And the best thing is we don't have anywhere else to hand that decision. We make it right at the bank.
You don't have to send it up to...
No, we don't have any higher ups.
New York.
You know, the bank is made at the bank decision, the loan decision is made at the local level.
The owners of the bank are all local business people, or...
Well, there's a board of directors,
okay.
There's a loan committee, and there's senior management. But the unique thing about Fresno First Bank is that all of the employees are owners. We are employee owners of the bank. So we all have stock, we all have a vested interest. We practice open book management. So from the tellers to the, chief lending officer, we all look at the books together every month.
Well, that's an interesting
concept.
It is, yeah, to open your books as a bank. To
show our shareholders, and all of us are shareholders,
that everything's up and up.
Well, more than up and up, it's how do we make money in the banking business, and what does my role play in the bottom line? And obviously each department contributes to the bottom line in the bank in one way or another. And understanding that may and does, I believe, impact the way you interact with customers and what you decide to do with your share of the business.
Sure.
Like, for instance, mine, which is
merchant services.
Yes.
I knew we were going to get to that.
That's okay. So I started that department for the bank 2.5 years ago, and my boss, Rick Witzel, the president of the bank, joked with me, I'm dumping you in the middle of the desert with a pad of paper and telling you to go out there and make a department. And so we did. And so, basically anyone, what we found, I should back up and say, the bank decided to enter this arena because we are primarily a business bank. And when you look at the revenue sources of the business merchants that we deal with, probably 70 to 90% of their revenue is coming through a source of credit cards. So understanding that and creating a transparent pricing model and being able to help navigate that for a merchant was a big obligation that we felt as a bank. Without saying too many things about disparaging about the competition, there are a lot of people out there that are commission salespeople for merchant services. So I don't talk to a merchant that doesn't say, I get 5 calls a day from somebody wanting to, replace my credit card machine and telling me they're going to have a better price. And, it's a very competitive market. But what happens is they put the terminal in there and then they disappear. and you have an 800 number that may end up in India or somewhere else on the planet where English is not the first language, and you're trying to get support and help. And so the bank really decided that we would jump in with both feet and do it right and provide not only the transparency that you don't find with other merchant services, but the support. So I give out my cell phone number and I give out my office number, and Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends, even I will get calls on my cell phone if somebody's having a problem, and we're there and we support the solutions that we put in place.
Wow. I have never had anyone at my bank give me their cell phone number.
Mine's on my business card.
Wow. Are we going to give it out today?
Oh, you certainly can.
Do you believe this? A banker that gives out her cell phone number.
Well, I believe in what we do.
Yeah. Listen, you're talking about credit cards, and it's the whole Target thing recently has brought to light that the technology we use in the U.S. is very outdated and antiquated. And in Europe and the rest of the world, they use a much more sophisticated kind of technology on their credit cards. Why the heck aren't we using it here? I know there's a huge cost involved in changing all of the terminals at all the stores, but after what just happened to Target and some other retailers, I think it's time we make that change. Don't you?
Well, I think that there's two sides to that coin. One
Okay.
is I think that the EMV chip does solve the face-to-face fraud potential.
This is the newer
Yes,
technology.
the new technology does solve the face-to-face fraud potential in that the chip collects not only the name of the individual that owns the card, but the card number, and it embeds it in the chip. Whereas the magnetic strip on the back of your card only has the card number, expiration date, and so that when you swipe the card can be separated from the person's identity.
Right.
And those strips can be taken off of one card and put on another that matches my ID, but it's not going to my credit card account, and that's where the fraud happens. But that ends, that insulation and protection ends the minute you use that card over the phone or you use that card on the internet, or so there's no protection for that piece. Now, that being said, there is a chicken and egg in terms of the equipment that will be required to accept the EMV chip. It is costly. It's not exorbitantly I don't think it's cost prohibitive. It is right now about double what they pay for a terminal if they buy it outright. But the real rub here is it doesn't fix all the situation, and the Durbin Amendment that was passed in October of 2011 specified that you needed, as a merchant, to provide two avenues for the debit transaction to go through, two different debit networks.
Why?
Well, if you look at the back of a card, you see Sirius and Plus.
Right.
Okay, those are two different debit networks.
Okay.
So the law required that you couldn't just say there was only one debit network. And I can't get into all of the detail of that, but EMV is only equipped to handle one.
Ah.
So there's a lot of things that have to be decided before it can be implemented because of the law, because otherwise you're going to implement something that's against federal law.
But the rest of the world has already adopted this technology.
Yes, they are, but they don't have the law. They don't have to
That Durbin.
That's right.
That Durbin.
The Durbin Amendment, that regulation. And you're right, the rest of the world already has it. And so when you go to Europe or when you go to Canada or Mexico, and what has that done? I like to envision, when you look down the barrel of a gun and you look at the fixed sight and it has a little bullseye on it, it's basically put the United States in the crosshairs of any fraudster.
The hackers are all looking at us. Yeah.
Easier to get through our systems.
Now, haven't the credit card companies kind of given an ultimatum and said, you guys either have to switch to these new terminals, or if there is fraud down the road, you're going to be responsible for it?
You're absolutely right. They have, and that's
I did my homework.
You did. I'm so impressed. The card liability, the merchant liability, will shift in October of 2015. So right now, you can put a big clock ticking because there's a push-pull. What are we going to do? Now, is there going to be a big hammer that comes down? No. What's going to happen is, one by one, when a merchant has to eat a loss, they'll go buy that terminal.
When they get hit sooner or later.
In the meantime, people like me who are out there working with merchants are trying to, not only educate, but pave the way for them to make decisions that will protect them or insulate them from that.
I just want my credit card to be safe.
Oh, I hear ya.
And I'm sure, the merchants want it, the bank wants it, The credit card company wants it.
And it seems like
Everybody except Mr. Durbin, right?
they're 10 steps ahead of us every time, those fraudsters. I have one thing, if I could impart one little bit of advice to a merchant. All merchant accounts that accept and process credit cards have a merchant ID number, and then their terminal or whatever way that they take credit cards, whether it's on the square, a type
on your
in
phone.
a cell phone, or online or through their website, you have a terminal ID. So the merchant number and the terminal ID are all that a fraudster needs in order, and a little bit of information about your business to then call the 800 number service for First Data or one of the 5 processors in the country and clone your merchant account.
You better protect that merchant ID.
Exactly. So if you get an email or a phone call saying your account's been disconnected, we need to get this information from you, it's just like giving them your Social Security number. Don't do it. Don't do it. And
especially if that email's from Nigeria.
Yeah. Well, they're getting so good, it looks like it's coming from First Data.
They are getting good.
And that's, and I had a customer that their terminal was cloned, unbeknownst to them, and we caught it very quickly and were able to reverse it. But what they do is they run refunds onto prepaid debit cards that come out of, some other country that have never had a balance on them, that you've never taken a payment from, but now they have a refund, which is basically draining your bank account.
Those crooks.
Yeah.
Those crooks.
So do not let guard your merchant ID and your terminal ID with your life.
Absolutely.
Very important.
Okay. Back local now.
Okay.
Fresno First Bank. We're almost out of time, but why should people bank local?
Oh, I think the biggest
Here's your chance
advantage, yes, I think the biggest advantage in banking local is that you have someone that knows your name, that cares about your business, that you're not just a number, and that will be responsive, even when it's maybe after hours, or it may be in a situation where the big banks have a number grid, and they say, well, it just doesn't make sense, and you're just a number, and they push it aside. And I think that one of the things that we try to do is invest in our community by working with local business owners through good times and bad times. And I think from a merchant services standpoint, why do you want to deal with us over one of the big, Elevon, Costco, any one of the merchant services out there, is I know the deceptive practices of the billing of all of those other, and I'm not kidding. When you look at that billing statement, it is a mess of numbers, and you don't quite understand why. I mean, if you ask any merchant who takes credit cards, do you understand your statement? They will shake their head.
They'll say no.
And go, of course not. They may know how to figure out the net effective rate that they're paying, but they really don't know how it works. So I will give them a free analysis, cost side by side, line by line, so they know exactly where the profit margin is and how it works. And if I can do better, great. And if I can't, then they can walk away and go, I have a great deal.
There you go. You know what? I see you guys almost every day because I go to GB3 up there.
I should be going every day.
That's for Fresno First Bank. Yeah.
That's right.
But you're too busy dealing with all that merchant stuff.
That's right.
All right. Catherine Fitzgerald from Fresno First Bank. Go and see her. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
Mike. It's very, very nice.
Here
Thank
on
you.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
All right.